There's a certain feeling, a kind of silent pain that eats away at you from the inside, even when everything on the outside seems to be in place. It's not ordinary sadness, and it's not fleeting anxiety. It's something deeper, more diffuse. It's existential emptiness. That unsettling sense that something essential is missing, a hole in the soul that no achievement, no relationship, no distraction seems to fill. You can have success, friends, health, and still feel that hollow echo, a disconnection, a persistent question. Is this all there is? What's the point of it all? You look around, and it seems like no one else gets it. Reason falls short. Logic dissolves in the face of this nameless anguish. This existential void is one of the taboos of our happiness-obsessed, productivity-driven society. Admitting that you feel empty, even when you have it all, can sound like ingratitude, like weakness. But what if this emptiness isn't a flaw? What if it's a calling? A symptom of the soul's deep hunger for meaning, for connection, with something greater than our everyday self? What if two giants of thought, Carl Jung, the explorer of the collective unconscious, and Viktor Frankl, the psychiatrist who survived the Holocaust and founded logotherapy, the therapy of meaning, had already mapped out this desolate terrain? And what if they offered not ready-made answers, but compasses to help us navigate the void, and maybe, just maybe, find meaning exactly where reason seems to fail? In this video, we're going to face the existential void head-on. We'll go beyond surface-level explanations and dive into the perspectives of Jung and Frankl to better understand this fundamental human experience. More importantly, we'll explore ways to find meaning not in spite of the emptiness, but through it. Get ready for a journey into the heart of the human search for meaning. The path to filling the void begins by understanding it, feeling lost, in the midst of apparent normality. That's the trap of existential emptiness. It doesn't shout, it whispers. It doesn't break, it drains. How did we end up in this inner desert, even when surrounded by an oasis of possibilities? The answer might lie in the deeper layers of our psyche, where the needs of the soul are often drowned out by the noise of the modern world. Existential emptiness isn't a modern invention, but our era seems to have created the perfect conditions for it to thrive. Viktor Frankl, in his seminal work, Man's Search for Meaning, argued that the primary neurosis of the 20th century, and perhaps even more so of the 21st, wasn't Freud's sexual repression or Adler's inferiority complex. It was the existential vacuum, the loss of life's meaning. Frankl identified several key causes behind this epidemic of meaninglessness. First, the loss of traditions and instincts. In the past, cultural and religious traditions provided a framework of values and a ready-made sense of purpose. Animal instincts guided our basic behavior. But the modern human, Frankl said, has lost many of those anchors. Traditions have weakened, and we're no longer purely driven by instinct. We're left in a kind of limbo. Tradition no longer tells us what we should do, and instinct no longer tells us what we want to do. So we often end up doing what others are doing, conformism, or what others want us to do, the subtle totalitarianism of public opinion. Second, the consumer society and its obsession with materialism. We're bombarded with the message that happiness and meaning come from having more, buying more, achieving visible success. We chase these goals relentlessly, but when we finally reach them, we often find the emptiness still lingers. The fleeting pleasure of achievement fades quickly, leaving behind an even deeper echo of meaninglessness. Third, an excessive focus on ego-based self-fulfillment. The culture of me encourages us to center everything around our own desires, our well-being, our happiness. Ironically, Frankl argued that meaning is rarely found by turning inward in a self-centered way. It emerges when we transcend ourselves, when we dedicate ourselves to something or someone beyond our own ego. Carl Jung, though using a different language, also explored the roots of existential emptiness. For him, the core issue was disconnection from the self, the central organizing force of the psyche, our inner wholeness that includes both the conscious and unconscious mind. We live too much on the surface, identified with our persona, the social mask, and our ego, the center of consciousness, while ignoring the vast depths of the unconscious and the true needs of the soul. When life becomes overly rational, materialistic, and one-sided, we lose touch with the symbolic world, with archetypes, with the spiritual dimension, not necessarily religious, that Jung believed was essential for psychological health. Existential emptiness, in Jung's view, is the cry of the neglected soul, the consequence of a life disconnected from the deep sources of meaning that lie within the collective unconscious and the process of individuation. Feeling empty, then, is not a sign that something is wrong with you. It may be a sign that something is missing in the way you're living or in the culture surrounding you. It's a symptom of disconnection from authentic values, from others, from the world, and most importantly, from the deepest parts of yourself. Recognizing this emptiness not as a personal failure but as a symptom of disconnection is the first liberating step. But how do we fill it? How do we find meaning when the search itself seems fruitless? This is where the inner compasses, offered by Frankl and Jung, begin to point, not outward, but inward and beyond the self. Viktor Frankl developed logotherapy based on his brutal experience in Nazi concentration camps. There he observed that those who were able to find some kind of meaning, even in the most inhumane conditions, were more likely to survive, both psychologically and physically. The search for meaning, he concluded, is the primary motivational force in human beings. But how do we find this meaning? Frankl argued that the meaning of life is not something we invent or passively receive. It's something we discover in the world, through our experiences and our attitudes. He identified three main pathways to this discovery. By creating a work or performing a deed, we find meaning through dedicating ourselves to a task, a cause, or a project that transcends us. It doesn't have to be something grand. It can be commitment to your profession, a creative project, tending a garden, or raising children. What matters is the dedication and sense of responsibility we bring to it. It's the act of giving something to the world. By experiencing something or encountering someone, love. We find meaning through experiencing values, like the beauty of nature, the truth in art, or most importantly, through loving another person. For Frankl, love is the ability to see the deepest potential in another and to help them realize it. To love and be loved in our authenticity is one of the most powerful sources of meaning. Through the attitude we take toward unavoidable suffering. This may be Frankl's most radical and profound insight. Even when faced with situations we cannot change, an incurable illness, the loss of a loved one, an unchangeable fate, we still have the freedom to choose our attitude. We can face suffering with courage, dignity, and compassion. In that choice lies the potential to transform personal tragedy into human triumph, to find meaning even in pain. Frankl emphasized that meaning is unique to each person and to each moment. There is no universal answer. The real question is not, what is the meaning of life in general, but rather, what is the meaning of my life right now, in this specific moment? Life is constantly asking us questions, and we answer not with words, but with our actions and decisions. For Frankl, existential emptiness arises when we fail to respond to these calls from life, when we avoid the responsibility of discovering our unique meaning through action, love, or our response to suffering. To fill the void is not about chasing pleasure or power. It's about actively engaging in the discovery and fulfillment of the potential meanings that each situation offers. This search for meaning, for filling the existential void, is a journey many of us share, even in silence. If this exploration resonates with you and you're seeking tools and perspectives to navigate your own path toward meaning, subscribe to Fragments of the Soul. Together, we can continue unraveling the mysteries of existence and find new ways to live with greater depth and purpose. Click below and become part of our community. Frankl's approach is practical, focused on action and attitude in the world. But Carl Jung offers a complementary perspective, one that turns inward toward the inner universe and the unconscious sources of meaning. While Frankl calls us to find meaning in the outer world and in our response to it, Jung invites us on an equally vital journey, the exploration of our inner world, the unconscious, as a primary source of meaning and guidance. For Jung, existential emptiness often signals a loss of contact with that deep inner dimension. Carl Jung believed that the human psyche has an innate drive toward wholeness, toward the realization of the self. When this drive is blocked, whether by trauma, a repressive upbringing, an overly materialistic culture, or rigid identification with the ego, discomfort, neurosis, and existential emptiness begin to emerge. For Jung, finding meaning wasn't primarily a matter of logic or conscious decision. It required reconnecting with the deeper layers of the psyche, where the wisdom of the collective unconscious and the guidance of the self reside. So how do we make that connection? 1. Pay attention to the symbolic world. Jung emphasized the importance of symbols as the language of the unconscious. Dreams, fantasies, myths, fairy tales, religious rituals, and artistic expression are all gateways to this realm. Analyzing our dreams, engaging in creative practices, painting, writing, music, dance, studying mythology and folklore, or participating in spiritual traditions rich in symbolism can help us reconnect with archetypal energies and find a deeper, more intuitive sense of meaning that goes beyond rational logic. Integrate the shadow. As we've seen in the context of self-sabotage, the shadow holds the repressed parts of ourselves. Jung believed that integrating the shadow is essential for wholeness and for discovering authentic meaning. When we face and accept our so-called negative or rejected traits, we release psychic energy and move toward inner completeness. Often, the void begins to be filled when we dare to embrace our full complexity, including the darkness. Listen for the calling, the voice of the self. Jung believed that every individual has a unique vocation, a path of individuation that the self is constantly calling us toward. This calling often reveals itself through intuition, deep passions, meaningful coincidences, synchronicities, or even through crises and neurotic symptoms, including existential emptiness. To find meaning, according to Jung, we must learn to listen to that inner voice, to discern our unique path, even if it goes against societal expectations or our own rational plans. Cultivate a religious attitude. in the broadest sense. Jung used the term religious, not in a dogmatic sense, but in its original meaning, religar, to reconnect. He referred to the deep human need to be connected to something greater than the ego, a transcendent order. This connection might come through organized religion, personal spirituality, communion with nature, or dedication to a higher ideal or supreme value. This religious attitude, this capacity for reverence and openness to mystery, was for Jung essential to filling the existential void and discovering lasting meaning. Jung's approach reminds us that meaning in life is not found only out there, in actions and relationships, as Frankl emphasized, but also arises from within, from our relationship with the unconscious, with symbols, and with our inner wholeness. Existential emptiness may feel like an unbridgeable abyss, a desert without end. But as we've seen, both Viktor Frankl and Carl Jung offer us maps and compasses. They show us that the void doesn't have to be the end of the road. It can be the starting point for a deeper, more authentic search for meaning. One doesn't cancel out the other. They complement each other. So, how can we weave these two perspectives into our own lives as we navigate existential emptiness? Integration begins by acknowledging the value of both approaches. We need the outward engagement that Frankl emphasized and the inner connection that Jung called for. Honor the emptiness as a signal. Instead of running from it or numbing it with distractions, recognize the void as an important message. Ask yourself, what is my soul longing for? Where have I lost connection? With myself, with others, with life? Seek meaning. Actively. Frankl. Action. What task, work, or cause resonates with you? Where can you contribute, even in a small way? Commit to something that feels meaningful. Love. Cultivate authentic relationships. Connect with beauty, with art, with nature. Be open to loving and being loved. Attitude. In the face of unavoidable suffering, choose courage, dignity, and compassion. Find meaning in how you face life's challenges. Explore your inner world. Jung. Symbols. Pay attention to your dreams, intuitions, and synchronicities. Engage in creative activities that allow your unconscious to express itself. Shadow. Have the courage to look at your rejected parts. What are you denying in yourself? How can you integrate that energy in a healthy, constructive way? Calling. What stirs your passion? What calls to you quietly and persistently? Listen to the subtle voice of the self, guiding you toward your unique path. Religare. Find your own way of connecting with something greater through spirituality, nature, philosophy, community, or a guiding ideal. Live in the present with awareness. Frankl, Jung, and even the Stoics, as we've touched on before, all emphasize the importance of presence. Meaning doesn't exist in some idealized future. It's found in the choices and experiences of this very moment. Individuation happens now. Life's call is answered now. Finding meaning isn't about reaching a final destination where the void disappears forever. It's a continuous process. A dance between inner and outer worlds, between action and reflection, between facing suffering and celebrating beauty. Meaning is woven daily in both the small and significant choices we make to live with more awareness, responsibility, and connection. The existential void. No one understands. Maybe it's not a curse after all. Maybe it's a universal invitation. an invitation to stop searching for easy answers where reason fails, and instead to start living the questions. An invitation to embark on the most meaningful journey of all, the search for meaning, the creation of an authentic life. Viktor Frankl showed us that even in the face of the deepest suffering, our freedom to choose our attitude and to find meaning remains. Carl Jung revealed that the deepest answers often live in the quiet dialogue with our unconscious, with the self. The void is not a life sentence of despair. It's a space that can be filled, not with external noise, but with the resonance of a life lived with purpose, connection, and courage. Where do you find meaning? Where does reason fall short for you? And where do intuition, action, or connection begin to speak louder? This journey is yours, unique, non-transferable. If this exploration of the existential void, life's meaning, Jung and Frankl resonated with you, share your thoughts in the comments. How do you navigate your own search for meaning? And to keep exploring the deeper questions of human existence, subscribe to Fragments of the Soul. Thank you for your presence and your deep attention.